You know, we are in a constant, invisible war. There are no missiles, no tanks, just an enemy we can't even see. And our weapons? They're the fundamental forces of nature. Heat, cold, pressure, even light. This is the story of how we fight and control the microbial world. So let's start with a question, and it's a simple one. But honestly, it's kind of unsettling. I mean, we think of potato salad as the most harmless dish at a picnic, right? But what if I told you that under the absolute wrong circumstances, it could become a vessel for something terrifying? Okay, so picture this. It's 2015 in Ohio. A local church is having a potluck. You know the scene, a community getting together, sharing food, having a good time. But what happened at this potluck would trigger the largest botulism outbreak the US had seen in almost 40 years. And it happened fast. I mean, within a day, people started showing up at hospitals. The symptoms were just horrifying, and they were escalating. It would start with blurred vision or trouble swallowing, but then it progressed to this spreading paralysis. For one person, tragically, it led to complete respiratory failure. So, of course, public health officials are scrambling, right? They're racing against the clock to connect the dots, and they trace the source to a single dish, a potato salad that was made with home-canned potatoes. The big question became, what on earth went wrong with the canning? So here it is. On the left, that's our microscopic villain, Clostridium botulinum. This thing creates one of the most lethal toxins known to science. But its real superpower? It can form these things called endospores. Think of them like tiny heat-resistant survival pods. And on the right? Well, that's the only weapon that can reliably destroy them, a pressure canner. And this, right here, is the crucial point. The person who canned the potatoes used a standard boiling water bath. But here's the science. Boiling water only gets to 100 degrees Celsius. Those C. botulinum endospores, they can laugh at that temperature and survive for hours. To kill them, you have to get the temperature up to at least 116 degrees Celsius, and that is just impossible to do without building up pressure. This whole tragic story is actually a perfect way to understand a fundamental rule of microbial control. Not all heat is created equal. So let's break down the science of how we actually use temperature as a weapon. You know, scientists have a name for this. It's called the thermal death point, or TDP. Just think of it as the specific knockout temperature for any given microbe. It tells you the absolute lowest temperature you need to hit for 10 straight minutes to make sure every last one of them is gone. For those C. botulinum endospores, that point is way, way above boiling. But it's not just about getting things hot, right? It's how you apply that heat that really, really matters. Dry heat, like in an oven, it works, but moist heat from steam, it is way more lethal to microbes. And why is that? Well, water is just a fantastic conductor of heat. It forces that heat deep inside the cell where it just wreaks havoc on all its vital proteins. It's total destruction from the inside out. Okay, so if just boiling water isn't going to cut it for the really tough enemies, what will? Well, let's move on to the gold standard for achieving true sterility. This is a process that goes way beyond simple boiling. Meet the autoclave. This machine is the hero of basically every lab and hospital out there. It works a lot like a pressure cooker. First, it seals itself shut. Then, it pumps in steam to build up pressure. This pressure allows the steam to get superheated, typically to 121 degrees Celsius, or even higher, which is more than hot enough to obliterate even the toughest bacterial endospores. But how do you know it worked? I mean, you can't see if something is sterile, right? Well, this is just brilliant. Use this special tape. It has white stripes on it that will only turn black when they've been exposed to the correct sterilizing temperature. It's this perfect, simple, visual proof that the unseen war was won. Now look, we don't have to go full-on sterilization for everything. Take milk, for example. We use pasteurization, which applies just enough heat to kill the dangerous germs and reduce the spoilage microbes, all without ruining the taste. So the high-temp short-time method, or HTST, that gives us the fresh milk you find in the fridge. But the ultra-high-temp method, UHT, gets it even hotter for just a couple of seconds, making it totally shelf-stable for months. It's all about finding that perfect balance between safety and quality. All right, so heat is a huge weapon in our arsenal. But it's not the only one. Sometimes you've got to fight microbes without, cooking your food or melting your equipment. And that's where this whole other set of physical methods comes into play. Cold, for instance, is a classic, right? Your refrigerator doesn't actually kill microbes. It just puts them in slow motion by slowing down their metabolism.
Freezing takes it a step further and stops their growth completely. And then there's drying, or desiccation. It's simple. Microbes need water to live. Take away the water, they can't grow. And freeze-drying, or lyophilization, that's a high-tech combo of both cold and dry, perfect for preserving things for a really long time. This next one is, I gotta say, one of my favorites, osmotic pressure. And it's wild because we've been using this for thousands of years to preserve food with salt and sugar. Think cured meats or jams. The science behind it is just brilliant. By creating a super salty or sugary environment, you literally suck the water right out of any microbe that tries to set up shop. It's an ancient and powerful form of microbial warfare. We can also use, just brute force. There's a process called Pascalization that literally squeezes the life out of bacteria to preserve foods like juice or guacamole. And in medicine, doctors use hyperbaric chambers to flood the body with high-pressure oxygen to fight certain types of infections. It creates a toxic environment for bacteria that can't survive in the presence of all that oxygen. Okay, for our final set of weapons, we're diving into the truly invisible stuff. Powerful energy waves and microscopic physical barriers that stop microbes dead in their tracks. So radiation basically comes in two main flavors. On the left, you have ionizing radiation, like gamma rays. This stuff is the heavy artillery. It's so powerful it can blast right through packaging to sterilize medical supplies or even food. Then on the right, you've got non-ionizing radiation, like UV light. It's not as powerful, it can't get through surfaces, but it's fantastic for zapping the air and surfaces in places like operating rooms. So what's actually happening when UV light kills a microbe? Well, it wages a direct assault on its DNA. The UV energy slams into its genetic code and actually fuses parts of it together. This completely scrambles their genetic blueprint, causing fetal mutations so they can't reproduce. It's a pretty brutal end. And finally, our last line of defense, and it's probably the simplest idea of them all, just build a wall. Filtration doesn't kill anything, it just physically removes the microbes from the game. HEPA filters, which stands for high-efficiency particulate air, use this superfine mesh to trap bacteria and viruses, giving us sterile air in really sensitive places like surgical suites. So let's just do a quick recap. For total, absolute sterility on something like a surgical tool, we bring in the immense power of the autoclave. For making our food safe without totally ruining it, we use the balanced heat of pasteurization. For stuff that can't take the heat, we use the penetrating power of irradiation. And to just yank microbes out of the air or our water, we use the simple physical barrier of filtration. 4 different problems, 4 highly specialized solutions. Which, brings us to one last really important question. With this whole incredible arsenal, from pressure canners to gamma rays, why isn't the war over? Why do we still have to deal with foodborne illnesses and hospital infections? I think it's a powerful reminder that while our control is amazing, the microbial world is incredibly persistent. And our vigilance? Well, our vigilance is everything.